doing the math, and I'm like, okay, this dining room set that's just sitting here,
Yeah.
and it's costing about $200 a month. All of a sudden, this is a very expensive dining room set that it's just ridiculous, right? So it's better to just offload that stuff. But the problem is you can't just pick someone out at the stoplight and say, hey, you're going to buy my things. Like, they have to want to do that.
Yeah.
So until you find a buyer, you're stuck with it.
The funny thing is, when I moved down to the Bay, I went to IKEA, and I remember the price because it was so funny. $1,001 for a dining room table, a dresser, a nightstand, a coffee table, chairs, all of this stuff that I don't use now, and I paid $1,000 for it. So is it really going to hurt me if I just unload that or just throw it away or give it away to someone? Of course it wouldn't.
No.
But we hoard stuff because we
know.
think we're going to need it, but we really probably won't. I think it's weird that we're like that as human beings.
No, it is. It is. And I don't know why you get like that, right? Where you feel like this, hey, I might need it or whatever. And really, my story was I didn't have a crystal ball. I didn't know what was going to happen when I left Portland.
Yeah.
And if I needed it in the next few months or whatever. The main thing was it was because of the pandemic, and a moving truck was ungodly. It was like $4,000 or $5,000 to get a rental truck. So I'm like, that's not going to work. That was the only option I had at the time.
Do you guys know where you're going to go next when you're done here in Portland?
We've got a target city, Chad, known as Las Vegas.
All right.
That is the target city. So we'll see. I don't know if it's going to work out or what. We haven't quite looked into what's available and all that, but possibly Vegas.
I like that. Las Vegas is nice. My best friend lives down there, so I visit Las Vegas frequently. But for you being the person that I know and having access to the different sports books to hang out, to watch games, you can have a lot of fun down there.
Dude, one of the funnest things I've ever done, I was there for the beginning of March Madness one year, and I just skipped from sportsbook to sportsbook, more so for the vibe.
Yeah, the
vibe's
vibe's incredible.
Yeah, and I'm sure I was betting games here and there, nothing crazy, but just the electricity. And there might be a game I'm not involved in at all, and there's a half-court shot that's a buzzer beater, and the whole place goes ballistic. That was so much fun. I highly recommend anybody out there that's thinking about going to Vegas, go there for the very beginning of March Madness. It was awesome.
It's a great idea. I have not been down for the opening weekend of March Madness yet. I've got a friend that I used to work with. His name's Ben. They plan a trip, he and his buddies, every single year well ahead of time, and they hit it the first weekend because you got games on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. He said it's completely awesome. The one thing I've started doing recently is when I go down there, I stay with my buddy Steve. So I don't stay on the Strip, and he lives on the south end of town close to South Point. So what we have done, we like to go over there just to sit and watch games because they got all the cushy chairs and the screens everywhere. And so I've gone down a couple of years right around New Year's where you stay and then you watch the bowl games and the playoff games. And just sitting in a big-time sports book with the vibe and the cat calls when games are going sideways for someone with big cash, it's just fun to be around that type of energy.
It really is. And there's something soothing about I'm not a fan of someone else's misery.
Yeah.
But you know how it is in a sports book. You'll just hear, oh, no, or whatever. And I'm like, I'm glad I'm not involved with that game and that sick outcome and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you hear weird things like, run the ball! And I don't even need to go over and introduce myself. I know exactly what they're talking about.
Know exactly what's going on. The funny thing is you'd laugh at this, how cheap I am sometimes. I was in Vegas. I was filling in for VSiN, the gambling network or whatever. And so they put me in a hotel at South Point.
And for those who don't know, at South Point, they've got this big plexiglass studio right next to the sports book where you can watch people broadcast.
Yeah, it's really cool. And their other setup is at Circa, which is beautiful.
I haven't been there, but I've heard they've got two different levels, right? Like it's the ultimate pimped out sports book, the premier place in town.
It's really a great setup, man. It's like as modern of a hotel and casino as you have, and the wall of TVs is beautiful, and their studio just overlooks all the sports book, action TVs, and all that. So anyway, I hitched a ride with like an engineer or something because South Point is way south, and Circa is way north on the Strip. And so I hitched a ride over there. When my shift was done, I had to get an Uber from Circa to South Point.
Yeah.
And I I hit it up, and it was, I don't know what it was, but it was like $111 or
What?
I'm like, I just started walking. I'm like walking until it's cheaper.
Yeah.
I walked for like a mile or a mile and a half or something until it was cheaper.
Well, the problem they've had, once they made the decision to have Formula One every year, it's created construction mess all throughout the strip because they got to lay down the tracks, and then after the race is over, they got to kind of pick up the tracks. But it's a constant state of flux down there, and the traffic continues to get worse. And my buddy's retired, but he picked up a part-time job for this off-road tours. They do like ATV rides and stuff out in the desert. So he has to take the tour bus to go pick up people at different hotels and drive them out. And he says it's a total mess.
Oh, man.
Based on where you're going to be. Like sometimes they'll go into town to drop them off. They'll get stuck at a stoplight for excessive minutes because of the jam up. And finally, people are like, hey, do you mind if we just bail here and walk over across the street to our hotel? That's how bad it is.
It is bad.
I wouldn't pay $111 for a ride that short because when there's no traffic from Circa to South Point, it would take you like 15 minutes.
I know. And that's what annoys you so much, where you're like,
it's just right down there, 3 miles away.
I can't pay that much. That's ridiculous. But yeah, I get it. It's funny because I lived in LA for a little bit, and the traffic, like the 405, depending on what time of day, it's really, really bad. And it's funny because people will talk about it from city to city, where it's like, oh, the traffic here in Indianapolis. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's gridlock, right? Like, but Atlanta is legit horrible traffic, and I totally believe
Atlanta's bad.
With Vegas and the racetrack, it has to be a nightmare.
I love going to the studios down there, the premier studios.
Really
where
nice.
Fox Sports is stationed out of, kind of their flagship. I've gone down there multiple times to cover like Laker Blazer games or different events, a Rose Bowl, and all I have to do is hit up my affiliate coordinator, and he'll get me set up with a studio. And it's just neat to walk in where so many legendary shows have been. And it's easy to find. But, of course, when I was down there, I had to plan ahead because you knew just getting from the hotel to the station could take 45 minutes to an hour, even if you're a couple of minutes away because of the traffic down there. It's insanity.
It is. It really. We deal in minutes, not miles.
No.
3 miles away sounds like it's going to be 15 minutes. Maybe no, that could be an hour and a half. Easy.
No. And in radio, the funny thing about this job, the one thing you can't be is late. It's the one thing you cannot do.
Yeah,
I had a boss, both my bosses, when I did morning radio, it was basically like you get one freebie a year with no questions asked. Because they know inevitably throughout the course of 365 days, maybe your alarm doesn't go off, maybe you got to bed late. It's hard getting up early at 3:30 every morning. One time. After that, it's a serious issue.
Wow. Yeah, they don't mess around, man. And I'll tell you what, it's one of those deals. I don't know why. I'm just dumb when it comes to this. I will be like prepping, researching, looking up all this stuff, grabbing audio, whatever, until the very last second where I just swoop in and then like sweat dripping down my face, like I made it inside. Why do I do that?
I don't know.
It's like just get there and then do your stuff. But my brain will not do that.
It was ingrained in me in college because I would get these huge assignments like turn papers, right? And they're given to you with the syllabus at the beginning of the semester. And you look at it, you're like, oh, that's 3 months away. I got this. And time passes and time passes. And before you know it, you're like, oh, crap, that's due on Monday. I've got 2 days to jam it down and get it done.
I'm like, I have issues. Flights, Chad, I don't know why. I will wait to the last second to drive there, and then it's just panic mode. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And I will, but I don't know why I do that to myself.
I'm the same way. I refuse. I finally did this probably 10 years ago. I got the TSA pre-check.
Me
the
too.
Greatest thing I've
Love
ever
that.
done.
It's awesome.
So what? Because I don't want to be one of those knobs that gets to the airport 2 hours ahead of time.
Right.
And then just sit there with nothing to do.
Right. That's right. Yeah, you're guaranteed. It's a lock. You just get right through there, man. It's awesome.
My man Brendan's here. Did you get TSA pre-check too?
Oh, yeah. No, my sister's a flight attendant. She's like, you got to get this. Changed my life. Not kidding. No more belts off. I can walk with my shoes on. Laptop stays in the bag. Awesome.
Yeah, it's baller status.
It is really cool.
It's really cool. All right, Bino is here for the entire show, and we got football to talk about. When we come back, we'll take a look at the top of the NFC. How about the 49ers going down to Geno Smith and the Hawks yesterday? Is anyone in the NFC going to challenge Detroit, who is the clear number one in the conference right now? We'll get to that next here on the Rip City Drive. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, in studio the entire show.
Smith back to throw. Smith takes off. Geno Smith, end zone ahead. Touchdown Seattle. With 12 seconds, Geno Smith again puts the Seahawks on his back. And
That's just incredible, man. How about the Hawks going into Levi's and getting the win there? And now the 49ers are tied for last place in the NFC West. Brian, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
It is crazy, and I don't know. Do you want to start?
No, let's
talking.
save it. We'll get to that in just a moment. We'll get to Purdy Palooza.
Purdy, yeah.
And I know you've heard a lot from 49er fans out there who have just been mad at you. But the only question we have that we'll get to is, you really want to pay that guy $50 to $60 million a year?
It's funny, right? Because the hate mail was rampant when Brock Purdy was playing well and putting up gaudy numbers. And
well, let's just do it right now. Here's the point about the 49ers that you and I have made for the last 2 years. He's a fine player.
Yeah.
And he's exceeded all expectation. But when you have to pay him big money and you're unable to pay other key parts of your team, or you suffer injuries to your key running back, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk goes down at receiver, and all of a sudden he doesn't have the guys around him to make that offense work. Is he a guy like a Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen that can hoist his team on his back and carry you to victories? And the answer is pretty clear. No.
right.
Which is why I don't want to pay him $50 to $60 million a year. It's craziness.
No, listen, man, you're preaching to the choir. But that's the thing. When you go back to last year and Purdy's putting up MVP-worthy numbers, and we never said the guy's a hack.
No.
He's a good player. He's good. But he benefits greatly from the talent around him.
Yes.
That's not to sell him short at all. And so you see it when you've got Brandon Ayuk, who's on the shelf with injury. George Kittle missed the game yesterday with a hamstring injury. It's not a mystery like, oh, wow, Purdy threw for 159 yards. That's a little bit different than what he normally throws for. That's why, man. Like, it has an effect. It has a big impact.
A major impact. And I saw this coming because I've watched football long enough to know how this works. Like, you can be a productive quarterback in the NFL in the right system with the right players around you. But the elite quarterbacks that I've watched throughout the course of my life, those are the type of guys that, regardless of what type of junk's put out there on the field with them, if it's great, then they tend to play better. But if not, they're still going to carry their team and put up numbers and lead them to wins.
Yeah.
Elway did it for years before he had Sharp and Davis and Rod Smith.
Right.
Dan Marino did the same thing. Tom Brady has done it over the course of 20-plus years in the NFL. That's what great quarterbacks do, and that's why there's a difference between the Brock Purdys of the world and the elite quarterbacks. Josh Allen, when he went to Buffalo, that franchise was a disaster.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long once they got him to where they suddenly got on track and started winning football games every year.
That's right.
Josh Allen's terrific.
It's a great point for the here and now, because for a while you heard, well, he wasn't anything until Stephon Diggs got there.
Yeah.
And Diggs helped. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Diggs was a major weapon, but look at the Bills right now. Did they have a who's who supporting cast? It's Khalil Shakir, who's his possession guy. Amari Cooper had a couple of really nice catches, but didn't put up gaudy numbers. No, Dalton Kincaid. Right, he's making do with lackluster weapons around him, and they take down the Chiefs yesterday, right? Like, he's making it work. He's a special player. And Brock Purdy is good. He's just not special. But, it's not just about him. Like you mentioned, Geno Smith. I think Joe Davis was on the call with Greg Olsen, and he said it wasn't the final drive. It was an earlier drive. But he's like, that drive's kind of like Geno's career, right? Like, little bit off to a rocky start, and then they just found a way.
Yeah.
And you got to give Geno a lot of credit. I'll tell you this. What he has to work with is what Brock Purdy typically has to work with.
Yes.
And Purdy doesn't have that right now.
No, so the big question is, are the 49ers going to make the playoffs? And Brock Purdy was asked that after the game.
Do you almost have to think you got to win out? How do you think about the big picture?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's our mindset for sure, is to win every single game. And, you got to do it one at a time. You can't look too far ahead. Up next is Green Bay, and we have to be all in on that and not look up. We just have to look down and do our jobs, get better as a unit, and we just got to find a way to win.
I mean, that's the reality of where they're at. They're going to have to win a lot of games down the stretch to put themselves in postseason position.
Yeah, they are. The good news is they still have a game at Arizona. That's Week 18, the final game of the year for the Niners. And They already dropped one game. That was an ugly loss, man. That loss at home. I think they got shut out in the second half. Cardinals had a big second half comeback. That loss looks terrible for them right now. That's really hurting them. Otherwise, it'd be flip-flopped. They still be ahead in the division. But you get Arizona Week 18, and listen, you're 5-5, but everybody else is 5-5 except the Cardinals that are 6-4. It's not like the Cardinals are 9-1 or 8-2. They're one game ahead of you. Yeah. So I agree with Purdy. Head down, just stack wins. If you stack wins, you might be okay.
This is their schedule upcoming. It's brutal. And
it's
this
tough.
What happens when you go to the Super Bowl. At the Packers, at the Bills, home against the Bears and the Rams, at the Dolphins, and then they host the Lions before that finale against the Cardinals. That is a difficult road to hoe right there.
It is. And the next two, that's the thing, man, because they're kind of teetering right now. This seems like the fork in the road of the season, and you really want to correct it. They've dropped, 2 of 4. It doesn't sound horrible, but with being a 5-5 team, at the Packers, at the Bills on a Sunday night. And it's like, if that lead starts to grow for the Arizona Cardinals, that gets bad. Now, their next 2 games are not great either. At Seattle, at Minnesota for Arizona. So, man, these next 2 weeks for the Niners and the Cardinals, they're big 2 weeks for both teams.
It's just so wild how the NFL season plays out sometimes. I mean, who had the freaking Cardinals winning 4 straight games? And they're on a hot heater right now.
I know, and that's why, dude, anybody who does the win-loss thing before the season starts week to week is out of their minds. It's just so ridiculous. You have no idea what the injury issues are going to be like. At the beginning of the year, this 4-game winning streak would have sounded pretty good, right? Like the Cardinals beating the Chargers, the Dolphins, the Bears, and the Jets. That before the year, you're like, holy hell, you rattled off those 4 wins. Now you look at it and you're like, Bears, Jets, Dolphins. It's not nearly as impressive as you might have thought it would be. But still, to your point, they've won 4 in a row, and they're in a much better position than San Fran right now.
You mentioned Geno Smith. Here's what he had to say as he described that game-winning touchdown after the Hawks win.
Shoot, man, we got to win. Just, doing whatever it took to win the game. I felt like they were, playing a lot of coverage there and just rushing forward. So, they were dropping back pretty deep, and I felt like if I could, escape that they were running some TE games from twists, so I knew the contain wouldn't be great. And if I could just, find a lane somewhere in there, I could, get out there and make some plays with my legs and, got in there to make a few scramble throws as well. So I think, in those moments, man, I just, play with instinct and try to do the best thing.
Love that guy. He's not an elite quarterback, but I love his story because he started out with the Jets, and then he was washed out with the franchise, continued to grind and battle, winds up in Seattle, gets an opportunity to start, makes the most of it, gets a new deal, and he's been good for them for what they've needed since he's taken over at quarterback. I love his story.
Yeah, his story is great. A couple other quarterbacks that struggled at first, and now they're in a better position. Baker Mayfield comes to mind. Like, Baker's putting up really good numbers, but for Geno, and think about that, it was different than Baker because Geno sat for like 6 years or whatever, right? Like, he was a backup for a long, long time. Finally got another shot and made the most of it. So, yeah, it's great. And listen, some of these quarterbacks, Geno is not a great athlete, but he gives you enough with his legs. It's a little bit like last night's game. Joe Burrow is not a great running quarterback, but you find that weak spot, and all of a sudden it's like no one's here. You've got 20 yards of green grass in front of you to pick up an easy first down. Herbert the same way. He's athletic enough, but not a runner. But when those guys like Geno, Burrow, Herbert, when they are just like, hey, you have no defense for me running right here, right now. You don't have to be Lamar to be effective, and those guys find ways to be effective enough.
I think it's scary when you get a quarterback like that because the defense isn't worried about Geno like they are Lamar. So all of a sudden they're back in man coverage.
Right.
The gap opens up, and a quarterback like that is smart enough to see it and then has enough speed to take advantage of it.
Same thing with C.J. Stroud. Like, he's a little Burrow, Geno,
he's
Herbert-esque.
more of a pocket quarterback.
Yeah, he's much more of a pocket guy, but he's got enough athleticism where against the Jets on Thursday night a couple of weeks ago, he's like, I guess I'll run for 20 yards.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do.
Yeah, he's cool. All right, take a listen to this. The team that's on fire right now in the NFL.
Goff takes the direct snap, fakes the give, sets in the pocket, steps up, looks, throws. It is complete. There goes J-Mo right side. He's got the angle to the end zone. 25-20, 15-10, 5, end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. J-Mo flies into the end zone, and the Lions extend their lead. Once he catches that ball, once he's got the angle, you're dead and you don't even know it.
All right, they're 52-6 winners over the Jags. The Lions are very impressive. Just one loss, and they're up on Minnesota in the division, and they look like they're going to seize control of that number 1 seed, Brian. But you said a ridiculous stat. I mentioned that Jared Goff, 4 touchdowns and 400 yards passing, perfect passer rating. What's this ridiculous stat on what he pulled off yesterday?
So this is the third game this season where the Lions scored more touchdowns than had incomplete passes.
Wow.
It's insane that they're able to do that. Look at the yards from yesterday, Chad. So the Lions outgained Jacksonville 645 to 170. That's like some college stuff. This should not be happening in the NFL at all. The Lions, they're one of these teams where they make sharp plays square, right? Where you're thinking the sharp side might be, you're giving me 14 points in the NFL. That's a ton of points. And you look up and you're like, oh, that's not nearly enough points. Like the point spread made the score yesterday. Lions 52, Jags 20, right? That's with the 14 points of the point spread for the Jags. Not even close. Boat race city.
That's incredible. Jared Goff looks terrific this year. Love the way he's playing quarterback. And, you know, his story's interesting, too, because everyone assumed that when Sean McVay kicked him to the curb, it's like, well, that's the great Sean McVay. He knows offense. He knows quarterbacks. Goff must not be very good. And then he goes to Detroit, and he finds this perfect marriage between coach, team, quarterback, and now he's taken over the NFL and is in MVP-type conversation. His career arc is very interesting to me. Took the Rams to a Super Bowl. McVay didn't think he could win a championship with him. Goes to Detroit, and now they look like the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, he did. He landed in the perfect spot, and he's making the most of it. It does make you wonder, right? What if there wasn't a trade, right? What if those two quarterbacks stayed put? What if Goff stayed with the Rams? Would they have won a Super Bowl? What if Stafford stayed put with the Lions? Would he still be there for this great resurgence and being on the cusp of a title? It makes you wonder, but I do know this. Jared Goff has a lot more years left than Stafford does. Stafford is still a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He's just older. And so, man, you think about it, I'm sure the Rams aren't kicking themselves for making that trade. They won a Super Bowl. How could you kick yourself? But when Stafford is over and done, I think Jared Goff still has the potential to still be a quarterback in the game for a long time.
And I think Detroit is legit because they're built from the inside out. Great play at the line of scrimmage. They're probably the best offensive line in football. If not, they're right there in the top 3. Defensive line's playing good football, even with significant injury. Like, they get it done on both sides of the ball. This is a complete football team, so I have no doubts in my mind that the Lions are right up there in the upper crust of the NFL. Do you see any weaknesses or potential problems with them?
Defensively, I mean, losing Aiden Hutchinson hurts a lot. They made the trade to bring in Zadarius Smith.
Yeah.
And Dan Campbell is like, I'm not expecting him to be Hutchinson. We just need him to be the best version of himself. But that hurts, losing Hutchinson. Defensively, good enough, not great, you know. And you know how it works, Chad. Like, if the pass rush isn't getting home, well, that exposes your secondary even more. And they're better, but remember Terrion Arnold, where he's just grabbing dudes left and right. It's like, if that pass rush isn't getting home against better teams that you're going to see in the playoffs, that could be a major issue. But that offense, man, that offense is clicking. They're a house. They are really, really difficult to beat. Not unbeatable by any stretch, but really, really difficult.
And most importantly, they're difficult to beat in their building. And it looks like they're going to play, playoff games at home. So it's like you're looking around the NFC. It's like, well, Philadelphia, San Francisco, whoever it is, good luck trying to win a game in that dome come playoff time because of the speed and the playmakers that they have and the way Goff is, throwing darts right now.
Yeah, no doubt. That's one of the questions about Goff is outside, not as good statistically. Yeah. And I mean, they didn't put that all to bed just by beating Green Bay in bad weather. You know what I mean? Like, still. But if you control your path through the playoffs at home, that's a major deal for Detroit.
All right, so after Detroit, Who is the next best team? Is it Philly? Is it Minnesota? Is it somebody else? Like, I love the way Philly's playing right now, but then in the back of my mind, I always remember that their coach is crazy. So Nick Sirianni's crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily trust them, but I know that roster-wise, they've got probably the best roster in football, and they're loaded up at a lot of key positions. Offensive line, quarterback's good, playmakers. Like, they've got all the makings of a very good football team. But where do you come out on Philly right now? Do you trust them, or do you need to see more?
I would need to see more. They're a team that you could make an argument they're the second best team in the NFC.
Yeah.
I think it's probably between Philly and Minnesota right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just something about Philly where you're like, is it going to be enough? But they have strengths, defensively. All right. Pretty good. Jalen Hurts, not sold on him, but he's got great weapons to work with. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, that's a great 1-2 combo. And Saquon Barkley has been fantastic this season.
Boy, the two acquisitions, he and Derrick Henry, the way they fit with their teams now, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is. So, and you look at that O-line, it's Detroit-esque.
Yeah.
They still have a really good offensive line, even without Jason Kelce. So, yeah, Philly could be a really tough outcome playoff time. But I would love to see more from Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts sometimes doesn't make the right read, or he skipped a pass against Washington. It was a little out pattern to A.J. Brown, where A.J. was just like, dude, are you serious right now? That's not even close to me. What are you doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah. And so that's where, like, Sam Darnold, Jalen Hurts, Jalen's better than Sam, but I would say not by leaps and bounds. And so that's what you wonder about come playoff time. If you have to have your quarterback be special, maybe in a game against the Lions, is that going to happen? I think Jalen Hurts is capable of doing that, but is that going to be the end result?
And that's really the question. To win in that building come playoff time, you're going to have a special game. And those one or two errors, mental errors, where you're not on the same page with your receiver, it results in a turnover. I mean, that can cost you in a championship game.
Absolutely.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. But that's the thing, man, is I think that it's weird, right? The Lions of this year were sort of the Niners of last year, right? Think about how San Francisco was just a machine.
Yeah.
And they were at home for the NFC title game.
Yeah.
And the Lions, they got off to a great start. They had a fantastic shot to win the game. It just didn't work out.
I wonder if you and I were talking about this before the show, but a lot of times when you suffer a great loss, especially in the postseason, it can change the way that you refocus as a franchise and the way you work in the offseason and all the details that you pay attention to get back and give yourself a chance to get back to the Super Bowl. Detroit had a game won that they blew against San Francisco. My guess is that provided a lot of motivation, and you've got the consistency and continuity on the staff with Dan Campbell, and the players came back focused. They're just playing like a very determined and focused group right now. That's what I see from them.
Right, and that's a little bit like San Francisco last year.
Yeah.
Right, where they were disappointed about the previous season.
Yeah, because they got there, and then their quarterbacks got hurt, and they had no chance.
Right, Purdy went down. They got blown out by Philly. That's a lot of motivation for the next season.
Yeah.
And then they're in the NFC title game. And they were a machine, Chad. There was no doubt, right? They were trucking. And yet, Detroit was still up big in that NFC title game. So it makes me wonder if you apply it to this season, the Lions are a runaway freight train right now. But in a 60-minute ball game, even in Detroit, would it surprise me if Minnesota or Philly got up big? And no, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
All right, Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, going to be with me the entire show. I'm loving this. When we come back, it's a bad night when Mike Tyson's ass is trending on Twitter. I got to check out with B-No and see if he saw the fight and if he had any issues with the stream and what he thought about Mike Tyson going up against Jake Paul. We'll get to that next, and then we'll get back to football at 4 with college football. This season right now is the best it's ever been. This playoff expansion is awesome. All right, Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, is in studio for the entire show. I feel like it's Christmas, getting a chance to hang out with my buddy and talk sports. All right, did you have a chance on Friday night to hang out and watch Netflix for Mike Tyson and Jake Paul?
I did. I was fired up for it. And it's funny, right before the Tyson fight, because it was weird, right? My girl and I, we had to run some errands at the very beginning of the card. I can't remember what we did. We went to grab food or whatever we did. I don't remember. But I know what it was. I was trying to send I've got a story for you, Chad.
Oh, good. Give it to me.
I was trying to send one of my nephews like this artwork.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't sell it.
From storage.
From storage. So I was sending it to him. I'll get back to the boxing thing real fast, but here's the story is I went to the post office to send this framed thing. And the guy, he measures it and he goes, it's going to be $65. I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, just write your address and where it's being shipped to on the box. I'm like, all right, cool. So I write it out. So in the meantime, he helps the next person in line. The lady is open now. And she's like, I can take you over here. I'm like, all right, cool. I go over there. She measures it. She's like, that'll be $98. I'm like, it was just $65 when she would not budge, Chad. She would not. She's like, well, he measured and he must have measured where it was like 5 inches. It's actually 6 inches. So you want to ship it for $98? And I'm like, no, it was cheaper 5 minutes ago. Why is it more? And so anyway, I left. And somehow it escalated to me like, good job being thorough. Good work.
Yeah,
whatever.
Well, $33 is a significant increase.
It's a big increase, right? We're like a 50% increase basically right there.
And no one likes to go to the post office. So just the fact you have to walk through the door and go through the process, you're already irritated. And then you go from 65 to 98 in 5 minutes. That's the problem.
I know, but me being an idiot, whatever. So I go to another post office. That was part of what we were doing at night at the beginning of the Tyson fight. So we go there. That'll be $104.
Oh, no.
Like, we're going the wrong way. What is happening over here? So we go to UPS, $70.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, we're back.
Seattle's got the lead.
We're back to the beginning of where
Smith back to throw.
Geno Smith trying to take over the show. I like that.
That's all right, man.
Geno,
he
we
deserves
respect
it,
you, man. Good work,
it's fantastic. So I got back. We left with the first fight of the undercard of the Tyson card. And we got back after like an hour and a half. We went to the post office. We went to UPS. We did something. We went to Dairy Queen.
Oh, nice. What, for a dilly bar or what?
Well,
Blizzard?
We're next level, Chad, because a lot of these Dairy Queen places, they're cheapskates, and they don't offer cherry sundaes. They don't.
What?
It's not cost effective.
I thought that was a staple.
It used to be. Not anymore. Not anymore. So my girl will buy cherries, and we'll make our own.
Yeah.
We're next level like that. So we're making our own cherry sundaes. We finally got back, and that same fight was just finishing up. And I'm like, there's no way that fight took an hour and a half. What happened? And so I'm still confused what's going on. And right before the Tyson fight, I get an alert on my phone. Jake Paul defeats Mike Tyson. And I'm like, what the hell? It was like backed up. It wasn't quite live because of the crash. But I didn't know I didn't know we were that backed up, but that's what it was.
I don't want that information right now.
Imagine if you're sitting down for the Super Bowl and there's an alert. Hey, the Chiefs beat the Niners 25-22 in overtime. You'd be like, what? That ruins everything. I know the ending here. So, I mean, it didn't take long for me to understand, like, Mike Tyson has no shot in this fight. But still, I didn't want to know that before it started.
Oh, my gosh. I got so excited. I felt like days of old because I had a group of friends. My buddy set it up where he was going to invite us all over. And he's got a nice house over in Vancouver. But his wife and the family, they had the entire spread. So the food, everything was set up perfectly, right? So it felt like it was late 90s getting together for Tyson and Holyfield.
Dude.
And just that feeling and the excitement of getting a chance to see Tyson, it reminded me of what it was like to have great heavyweight fights. And you go through the night, and the lady fight was great, even though I thought Serrano got completely screwed by Taylor. The judges, I have no idea what they were seeing in that fight.
Me either.
Right?
It was a tremendous fight. I love both women went all out.
It was so good.
Yeah.
And then you get to Tyson and Paul, and it's like 30 seconds in, and I realized, like, oh, it's what I feared. Tyson doesn't have anything. He's got nothing. His legs were shot.
Right. Oh, dude, he had 0 legs the whole fight. It wasn't like he got tired in the 7th. He had no legs 10 seconds into the fight.
I know. And then Paul is one of those guys where, like, I don't know him personally, but he comes across like a douchey guy who's begging for, like, attention.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted Tyson to give him some, like, 1980s hammer time and knock him out, and then we could celebrate and Tyson could walk away and be good. But as the fight went along, I was like, I think Paul is being nice to him and not punching him out.
Right. He definitely was. And that's my question is, what would have been better for Paul? Would it have been what happened where he took it easy on him at the end?
I think it's what happened.
Or to just knock him out?
Yeah, because we'd never forgive him if he knocked out Mike.
Right.
But he actually, I hate to say this, but he took care of Mike because I didn't want to see Mike get embarrassed, right? Because Mike is one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I'm sure you feel the same way. He could have embarrassed him, but he didn't, and he just let him go for the entire fight. So I walked away, like, frustrated, but I realized afterwards, I was like, I think Paul, as hard as it is for me to admit this, he kept Tyson in that fight.
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And he spun it initially where it's like, yeah, I was worried about his power and I didn't want to get caught. And then at the end, he's like, yeah, I was kind of looking out for the guy. And then all the jokes with Jake Paul where it's like, he's going to face a now deceased Babe Ruth in a home run derby and all this stuff. Is that's his brand now. Like, he's got it. If he's serious about this, he has a lot of work to do to be a credible fighter.
Yeah, because what is he taking out now? Nate Robinson and Mike Tyson.
Yeah, right.
But it's probably one of those deals where he got out there in the ring and he's probably like, all of a sudden it felt like he was fighting his grandpa. And he's like, I can't beat this guy.
Right. And a bunch of UFC guys, so the real fighters don't look at him as legit. And so if he really wants to go legit, he's got to do a lot of work, man.
And then the weird part was before the fight, I look up, I'm like, wait, did they just show his ass? I just got a Mike Tyson ass shot.
Right.
Wasn't expecting that. And then I went straight to Twitter, and sure enough, Mike Tyson's ass was trending. And it was great because one tweet that I saw that I thought was so funny, and it really encapsulated the entire night. Buffering. Mike Tyson's ass, buffering.
Right. Yeah.
What I don't understand is, like, these companies like Netflix or Google or YouTube, they're so massive, billions of dollars. How do you have a live event like that and not have everything tightened up to where you don't have the buffering issues?
I don't know.
And the NFL is probably looking at that going, wait a second, we're going to have a game on Netflix?
Yeah. And that game, I don't know, maybe it'd be there are going to be a lot of people, like 20 to 30 million maybe, somewhere in that ballpark. And they're estimated, 60 million or so watching the Jake Paul fight. So, yeah, you can't have buffering issues when it comes. The NFL is going to be like, yo, we got to dot some I's and cross some T's on this thing.
I guarantee you, man. The NFL doesn't mess around.
But you're right, man. Just the nostalgia of it.
Yeah.
When you go back to everybody put in $5 for this Tyson fight, let's watch on the smallest, most horrible TV ever. But the electricity, I'll tell you what, man. The athletes that have generated just buzz and electricity leading up to a big event, Mike Tyson is on the short list for sure, man. Those fights were epic.
Two of my favorite nights ever as a sports fan were the two Tyson Holyfield fights. Just the anticipation and angst going into the fight. It's the best.
Yes. Or when he was the first fight after jail against Peter McNeely.
Yeah,
and
Pete McNeely doing the pizza commercials.
Hurricane was like all nervous in the ring, like bouncing back and you just see Mike just staring at him left to right. I'm like, Tyson's gonna kill this guy. Like, those fights were unbelievable. It was so much fun.
Yeah. That's why I'm in. That's why I couldn't resist sitting down with my buddies, just like old times, to be able to watch that fight. And it was disappointing, but I was thankful that Paul didn't knock him out because I couldn't have taken that.
Yeah, and at least the other fights were good. Like the female fight was unbelievable. And the guys fighting before that was a pretty good fight.
That gouge above Serrano's eye was massive.
Oh, it was nasty, man. That was.
I just kept waiting for that whole slap to fall off. Roy Jones.
Yeah. Roy Jones, like, you do. Sometimes you have southpaw and you have a clash of heads. Right?
Yeah.
I get that, but it looked a little bit different.
Yeah.
With that fighter.
You can't be laying the head in there every time.
Looked a
that
little
was intentional.
Different. Yeah. And Roy Jones is like, there's something wrong with his mouthpiece. It's like, Roy, they can't get Tyson's mouthpiece out of his mouth every round. Like, it's in there. He's just biting his glove for whatever reason.
And afterwards, he said, I have a biting fixation.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we know, bro. I've seen it. I've seen it in person. Pretty wild.
That was one of the greatest lines of the evening. That was so good.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. We'll come back. We got to dive into some college football. Loving the playoff expansion and what it's giving to us. Plus, Noes team Notre Dame is going to take on Army this week in a big-time matchup. We'll get to all of it. All right, Trailblazers coming off 3 straight wins. Shaden Sharp had 32 in the 4-point win over Atlanta yesterday. They kick off a 5-game road trip Wednesday in Oklahoma City against the Thunder. That tip-off is at 5. Chris Burkhart will have game day at 3. It's presented by Coors Light. On your home of the Trailblazers, 620 Rip City Radio. The Oregon Ducks will enter a bye week. That's their first bye in 8 weeks. And then they'll play their finale against Washington. Oregon, with the win over Wisconsin, clinched a spot in the Big Ten title game. And they will meet either Indiana or Ohio State, who will meet up on Saturday at 9 on Fox. Oregon State will host Washington State Saturday. Head coach Trent Bray is going to join the show coming up at 5:20. We got Monday Night Football tonight in Big D. Houston at Dallas. The Texans are favored by 7. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, is in studio with me today for the entire show. All right, Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio in studio. We're hanging out. Get a hold of Brian Noe, please. He needs to sell the rest of his stuff in his storage unit.
Please do. Please.
See, Brian Noe liquidators right now.
I almost will pay you at this point, to take this stuff away.
He'll make you an offer you cannot refuse.
I'll make up stories about the dining room set will absolutely change your life somehow. I don't know how it will, but I'll make up a story if that makes you feel better. So, yeah, if you need a dining room set or a world map, I'm trying to clean out the rest of the storage unit. Please hit me up. Twitter/X works at The Noe Show. You can email me if that works better, brian.noe5@yahoo. But everything must go, Chad. Everything must go. Liquidation sale here.
That's right. Just don't ask him to ship it because he's not going to pay for it. $98. Are you kidding me? I wish I could have been there to see your head explode on that information. Wait, what? It was just 65.
It was just 65. She's like, that's not an exact. I'm like, wait a minute. So if I had the address written on the box, it would have been $65. But because I didn't, now it costs more. What are we doing?
I'm still hung up on the fact that not all Dairy Queens have the cherry sundae.
Oh, very rarely can you find a Dairy Queen that has cherry sundaes.
I don't even know how that's possible. And I realize that you and I are now at the age where we're like, it's not what it used to be. That's crazy.
I know.
A cherry sundae, that's not like some type of like freak flavoring or item choice, right? Cherry is a very frequent flavor that you can get in so many different things.
That's right. Yeah, but I've asked Dairy Queen.
Come on, man.
Places, and they're like, it just costs a little bit more, so most of the stores don't bother. I'm like, all right. But I'm still at the age where I don't yell at clouds and complain. I just look for a solution.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just buy your own can of cherries, dump them in there. It's almost even better.
It is better because you got the Dairy Queen ice cream, and then you put your own cherries on top, and you're not going to short yourself on cherries, right? You're going to make sure that you have plenty of toppings to fit it the way you want it.
Oh, and you can refill it, right? You just
if you eat too many cherries, put more on there.
Oh, yeah. It's great. So nothing wrong with that.
All right. College football right now, Brian. I was thinking about this because I've been a fan for a long time. I go through phases, but I've never enjoyed college football more than I have right now. And I think it's all directly related to the college football playoff expansion because I mentioned to you last week when I talked to you, I mean, like, for instance, right now, there are still 20 teams across the country that are alive for a potential playoff berth, and that continues to give us 10, 15, up to 20 games each weekend with playoff implications.
Yeah.
And so I'm loving this. And now you look at the different conferences. You've got multiple teams in the ACC who are vying for the top spot, Clemson, Miami, and SMU. The Big Ten is going to have potentially 4 teams in with Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State. The SEC could have 5 to 6 teams in. And then you've still got teams on the outside of the major conferences like Army, Boise State, that are still alive. And Notre Dame, as an independent, is right in a position to get to the playoff.
Right.
I've never seen anything like it to where so many fan bases have interest this deep in the season, and we're getting ready for week 3 in November.
Yeah, I think it's been great. I think it's the best of both worlds because, to your point where you're talking about the teams that make it there, take a team like Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame taking on Army. If it's a 4-team playoff, you're like, who cares? right? They already lost to
Exactly.
Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
It'd have to be chaos for them to be one of the 4 teams left standing.
Yes.
That game wouldn't matter a whole lot. But like you're explaining, it does matter a whole lot more because as of now, Notre Dame is a playoff team.
They are.
And there are numerous examples like that. Bama. Bama is at Oklahoma is their next game. Bama has 2 losses. They're not getting into a 4-team playoff.
No.
You know? They'd have to win the conference somehow. That's the only way. And that still might not be enough with 2 losses, right? There wasn't an automatic berth. So, yes, it's made it much better. And then when we finally get there to the 12-team playoff, this is why I think it's the best of both worlds. Now we finally have parity in college football, at least at the top of college football, because for so long, it was the usual suspects. It's like wake me when the playoff rolls around, and it's Georgia and Bama and Clemson and Ohio State, rinse and repeat. That's the way it was. And this year, there is not a team that is towering above the rest.
No.
It doesn't even feel like if we had the typical powers that be, you'd be like, okay, cool, we have 12 teams, and it's still going to be the final 4 teams anyway. I don't feel like that at all right now.
I know. Look at the top right now. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State, Indiana, Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Miami, and Boise State. Those are your 12 right now in the AP. The crazy part about that is, Brian, I can't look at any of those teams and point to one and say that clearly is the team that is head and shoulders above everybody else.
Right. That's right. And you could play the game of, hey, could I see this team win 4 games or 3? Could I see this team win 3 or 4 games, depending on if you have a bye or not? And there are a lot of teams I'm like, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's great, isn't
yeah.
it? I think that's the way it is in the NFL, where every year you have a couple of teams that appear to be above everyone else. But those teams don't always win, right?
Right.
Even Tom Brady didn't get to the Super Bowl every year.
Right.
And even in playoff games, he would lose. And that's what I love about college football now, where you look at Georgia and you know how tough they are, but they've got issues with the offensive line. They're not perfect. They could drop games. Oregon could possibly have to beat Ohio State a 3rd time after they meet them in the Big Ten title game and face Georgia to win a national championship. Like, the scenarios and how it's all going to play out is just fascinating to me.
Me too. I'm all about it. I think that I said this, and I was wrong. I think that if it's an expanded playoff field, right, 12 teams, that's a better postseason experience. And I'm like, if I have to sacrifice a little bit of the regular season and how important it is for a better postseason, I'll do that. And it hasn't worked against the regular season yet.
That's the perfect point, and that's the part that surprises me. I knew the playoff expansion would be great because we get more playoff games and we'd have campus sites, which is going to be like crack. But what I didn't think about at the time and what we're getting now is all of these different games that have meaning because of the way the playoff race is taking shape. So now we're getting multiple good games every Saturday deep into November. And you know what it would be like at this time on any other year? Most of the teams would be out of the race, and those games would lose interest.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
So you might get a couple of games the final week of the regular season where I thought at the beginning of the year, man, it's going to suck if we get Ohio State and Michigan, and it's like it doesn't even really matter.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not the scenario. You're going to have a couple of those games where it's not as special as it would be.
Yeah.
But I think it's done more good than harm. I think it's actually elevated a lot more games that you wouldn't care about. Miami is a 1-loss team. They were number 9 heading into last week.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have a realistic shot to be a Final Four team.
Not with their resume. And this is where, again, I thought it was weird at first because the way they set up the playoff, they wanted the conference championships to mean something, right? Well, now that I'm looking at it today, because at first I was like, just put the 12 best teams in and forget the conference champions because not all conferences are equal, right?
Right.
But now with the way the playoff is taking shape, the fact that these conference championships matter, it's going to give us some representation from all the conferences. And I have to admit, that's going to make the playoff fairly interesting.
It is pretty cool, yeah. And I do like how we get the group of 5 involved here. We're guaranteed to have at least a group of 5 team. And I like that, man. I think that's cool. So, I'm a little torn on that one because there is a side of me that says, hey, you won your garbage conference and you're invited. That sucks. But give me the top 12. But I do like I'd be lying to you if I said otherwise, where I do like where you have some conferences and some teams that are represented, and it just kind of unifies college football, right? Where all the smack talk, and let's say an ACC or a Big 12 school gets smacked around, and it's just like, you didn't belong there to begin with.
Yeah.
That's not all bad for college football.
I agree. Well, look at it this way. We all love the NCAA tournament. They don't put the 68 best teams in every year.
No, that's right.
They have representation from all the different conferences, and guess what? We love it. And so what I'm excited to see is, what team is it going to be, an Army or a Boise State? When are we going to get that first round upset where one of these group of 5 teams upsets one of the big boys in the first round? We're all going to love it and go crazy about it.
Right. Well, think about, it reminds me of when Boise State beat Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
In the bowl game. Now, imagine if that's a playoff game.
Oh.
It's even bigger. So
it's so good.
Sure.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. We're going to focus our attention on the AFC next. Who is the best team? Is it Kansas City? What about Buffalo? Is Baltimore still there? Or the Steelers, who are emerging at 8-2? We'll get to that next. Brian Noe in studio. You got the Rip City Drive.
Fakes the throw. Allen going to step up in the pocket. Now he's going to take it and run, and he's got the first down.
Bring my laptop up.
Fakes the throw. Allen going to step up in the pocket. Now he's going to take it and run, and he's got the first down and more. 10, 5, and muscles his way into the end zone for an unbelievable 26-yard touchdown run. Are you kidding me?
Now, Noe, did you tell me that touchdown by Josh Allen punked you on some of your teasers?
It did. It completely punked me. That was totally unfortunate because I had, I think, 4 teasers with the Chiefs. I love the Chiefs getting 8.5.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many reasons why. I won't bore you with all of them, but it's like just with the spread as an underdog, Mahomes and the Chiefs are unbelievable. But with like losing by double digits almost never happens. So that's as close as you could get. And it didn't work out. Yeah, so if you get a stop on 4th and 2, even if you allowed a first down, there's a chance that more time ticks off the clock. Maybe they'd run the timeout or have to settle for a field goal. But, yeah, scoring that touchdown was not good.
I was so ticked off when they scored that touchdown because I want great drama. And so I wanted them to have to settle for a field goal so that we could listen to the stadium and the fans grip as Patrick Mahomes take the field for a potential game-winning touchdown drive.
Absolutely. It's not just bets. The football fan in you absolutely wants to see Mahomes down 5 compared to down 9, right? Like, that changed everything. So, but hey, give Josh Allen credit. He just made it happen. And give the Bills credit, too, for there are a lot of – I think this is actually the benefit of having an unreliable kicker in Tyler Bass, who missed the big kick against the Chiefs in the playoffs. And if this is Brandon Aubrey from the Cowboys, and this is an automatic 3 points, you might lean toward taking the field goal there. But Tyler Bass, it's a mixed bag. You might not even be up by 5 if you settle for a field goal. So 4th and 2, you got Josh Allen. Let's go for this thing.
Man, Josh Allen's playing good football right now. He is probably the leader in the clubhouse for the MVP award. You know, that game, I don't know if you had the same thought. I watched it. I'm like, okay, Buffalo, you did what you were supposed to do. You won a big game at home against the Chiefs. But are you going to be able to get that done come postseason time? That's the only thing that went to my mind. Can you do that in the postseason when it really matters against that guy and that team?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And there's going to be a lot of competition, right? Like, you look at the Ravens are a tough team. Maybe you run into Pittsburgh or you have to face the Chargers. There's a lot of competition in the AFC. And that's the thing. There are a couple of quarterbacks in that same area. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Can you be special in the playoffs if it comes down to that and finally get over the hurdle that is Mahomes and the Chiefs and everybody else? Imagine if they get over that hurdle and then get tripped up in the Super Bowl against the NFC team. Like,
that'd be so brutal.
Yeah.
But with the Bills, what I like about them now with Josh Allen, they appear to have more balance on offense. They're running the football well. They're a pretty good defensive team. And he's finding some comfort with his playmakers. Amari Cooper had a couple of nice grabs. I just like where they're at, but they appear to be more balanced to better deal with a team like the Chiefs come postseason time. I don't know if that's going to work, but that's what I see right now. I just see more balance. Josh Allen can carry them when he has to, but they're not asking him to be everything at all times now.
That's right. I look at the Bills and I think, one, where are you playing in the playoffs?
Yeah.
You know, are you on the road? Are you at home? Let's start with that.
Right now you're going to be playing at Kansas City.
Yeah. And then who are you facing? That's the other thing is I can't forget about the loss to the Ravens where they got absolutely punked. I mean, just dump trucked. They ran the ball down Buffalo's throat. And there's nothing Buffalo could do about it. And so if that's the matchup, I don't know. That's great for the Bills because their run defense is iffy. And I don't love the receivers that they have to throw to. I don't want to discredit Amari Cooper and Khalil Shakir. You could do a whole lot worse than that. But it's not upper echelon.
No, I agree.
You know, there are other teams that have much more to work with. Look at what Burrow has to work with in Cincy. You know, that's a lot better than what Josh Allen has to work with. So some of that stuff could absolutely bite them come playoff time.
All right, so here's my question about Kansas City. If you look at the rest of their schedule, right now they're sitting at 9-1. They play at Carolina, home game against the Raiders, followed by a home game against the Chargers, at the Browns, home against the Texans, and then they finish up at Pittsburgh, at Denver. more than likely, they'll probably end up with the top spot in the AFC and get that bye. But what I'm concerned about right now is their inability to score points on a regular basis. It's a struggle for them offensively, and it's hard for us to say that because they have Mahomes, but with the injuries and the way things have played out, it's been a struggle for them. Is what we saw last week against Denver, they were fortunate to get the win. We saw them go down to Buffalo. Like, are these offensive issues going to creep up to where it's going to cause them to drop a couple of more games down the stretch? Or are they going to right the ship? Like, I don't know what to make of Kansas City. I respect the heck out of them. And I love Mahomes, and Andy Reid's might be the best coach in football right now, but I do know that they lack playmakers. So I don't know what to make of them.
Yeah, I think that the Chiefs, they're probably going to lose a couple more regular season games. I believe they will. I'd be surprised if this is a, 15-2 team, and they just drop one game from here on out. I don't think that'll be the case. Because the Chiefs, they typically play their best when their best is required. And yesterday was an exception. It can happen from time to time, but typically they really crank it up if they're doubted, if they're an underdog, those type of spots. And they'll let their guard down from time to time if they're facing it. Remember they lost on Christmas Day against the Raiders last year? And
the Raiders celebrated like it was the championship.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that'll happen. So could they get tripped up by, I don't know, like the Texans or at Cleveland or at Pittsburgh? I definitely see multiple losses from here on out for KC. But, hey, man, we know the drill. Come playoff time, hopefully for them, Jalen Watson will be healthy. He's a corner that they really miss right now. Trent McDuffie is fantastic. And, hey, listen, we know what Andy Reid and Mahomes are capable of. And they've transitioned to much more of like a Patriots feel. Yeah. Where it's not a dominant offense anymore. But
it's defense and
they
ball
can
control.
grind you, man. They can really grind you and win games.
Yeah, this is how bad it is for the Chiefs, where Andy Reid's like, you know what? It's not such a bad thing to lose a game.
It's a great game to learn from for some of our young guys. Two good teams play each other. The margin between winning and losing is small, man. And so, and that starts with me. We can all learn from it and take something out of this and make us better down the road here. So we'll do that.
He doesn't sound like a guy that's greatly concerned.
No. And, yeah, that's the thing is you look at some of these Super Bowl years from KC, and it was not a sparkling regular season by any stretch. Like last year, they were 11-6. They lost 6 games. And some of these losses, like the Raiders, they lost to your Broncos. You know, that's really low.
They did. No, they did. They're supposed to win games like that. You're right. So they're accustomed to that. And you know as well as I do that it's not about right now for the Chiefs. How healthy are they come postseason time?
Yeah, it's really health, and they've got as good a chance as anybody.
Whether they're playing at home or not.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. Against the Ravens on the road last year, and they're just so tough. I would not jump off the bandwagon because they lost a road game to Buffalo.
All right, here's the weird part about the conference. So we agree that Buffalo and Kansas City are up there at the top. Is it still Baltimore that's with them, or is it Pittsburgh now? Who do you still put Baltimore in that top 3 even though they've dropped 4 games?
That's a great question because I think you got to consider the path, right? Where the Ravens are more likely to be a wild card team now. Pittsburgh's more likely, not a certainty, but more likely to be the division winner. That's a big difference, man.
A huge difference.
The Ravens, if they're a wild card team, they might be on the road the entire time. You might have to win 3 road games to get to the Super Bowl. Where if Pittsburgh wins the division, you got to play at worst, 1 road game.
Yeah.
At worst. You might get 2 home games.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're seated.
Here's the wild part about Pittsburgh's remaining schedule. That was their first division game they've played all year yesterday. So 7 games to go. 5 are against division opponents, including 1 more at Baltimore. And they're 2 games out of division, I think, are against Philadelphia and I want to say San Francisco.
Yeah, it's tough what they face. Here, let me get to 2024. I was scrolling down to like 23 and 22. But, yeah, they're non-division games. It's at Philly, and you get the Chiefs.
Oh, the Chiefs. Yeah, Chiefs, not the 49ers. That's tough, man.
That
5
is tough.
division games, and then you get Philly and the Chiefs.
Yeah, and that division also. It's pretty crazy to see the Bengals at 4-7 and the Browns at 2-8. That's pretty crazy. But we all know that what Burrow is doing, and just watch him last night, that's not a walk through the park to get a couple of wins against Cincinnati right now for Pittsburgh at all.
Oh, of course not. No.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow, that second half that he had last night, it's one of the greatest halves of football I've ever seen by a quarterback. And Joe Burrow is cementing himself. We've always put him up there like he's after Mahomes, it's Joe Burrow. Well, after watching him play this year, I have no doubts in my mind that he is right up there near the top in terms of quarterback play. And what I love about quarterbacks, you watch Josh Allen, you watch Joe Burrow, two great players, but they do it in such different ways.
Very different ways. And yeah, that's the thing is I think you have to keep an open mind when you're evaluating quarterbacks. You think about Lamar. The way he plays is way different. It's a completely different approach, totally different style. So if you're, I don't know, your formula of judging whether a quarterback is good or not is to just go by these certain stats. It's like, well, that quarterback might not fit into that box per se, right? Like, I think you have to weigh just what's working, what's helping you win games, what's really production. And so to your point, when these guys do it in different ways, they can be productive and helpful in many different ways. So I don't think there's just one way to gauge whether quarterbacks are getting it done or not.
I agree. I've accepted the fact that Lamar Jackson, he's never going to be the quarterback that we want him to be, but he's also one of the most dynamic players I've ever seen at that position. I just know this. I definitely know they can win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. They need to remember their identity, and it happened to them again yesterday.
Yeah.
When they play Pittsburgh and Kansas City, they forget who they are.
Yeah.
And they become pass happy.
I know it.
That's not putting him in a position to have great success.
It is not. It's like rely on Derrick Henry, man.
He had 65 yards. You stop giving the ball.
Keep giving him the rock. He's doing fine. It's not like he's averaging 1.9 yards per rush or something, right? Like, I don't know why in the playoff game against the Chiefs, that's a football mortal sin right there. Are you kidding me? Like, you had 6 combined rushes for your running backs. What are you doing? Like, that's your strength is running. That's what you do best. That's what the Chiefs had problems with.
It was the only weakness on that defense.
It's crazy, man.
I don't understand it. So I'm just like, okay, so when you get back in that position, are you going to remember who you are and go out there and take advantage of the opportunities? Because when you do that and then you put Lamar in a position to do what he does best, it's a game changer. But maybe, too, it could be that for the Steelers, they see Lamar all the time. These NFC teams that see him for the first time, they never win, right? But Pittsburgh's aware of him, and they know how to deal with him. I don't know what it is, but when he plays Kansas City and Pittsburgh, he looks much more like a mortal than against any other team in the league.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Lamar. We all know how special he is, how talented he is. But the thing is, when it comes to the playoffs, and it could be 2, maybe 3 throws, where I don't need you to be pinpoint accurate.
Yeah.
Like the most accurate quarterback of all time. But you got to complete that throw.
You got to make the play.
The guy is wide open. You got to make that throw.
Yeah.
And there are a handful of times where he doesn't.
And I know Joe Burrow is going to make that throw 99 out of 100 times.
Yeah. And that's the difference, man. Like, it is what we just heard from Andy Reid. The margin between winning and losing is so small. I'm not sitting here telling you Lamar misses 15 wide open throws per game. It could be 1. It might be 2. But depending on when that throw is and who you're facing and all the circumstances, that could be the difference between winning and losing.
Yeah, especially when your kicker misses kicks. Let's take a listen to John Harbaugh. He was talking about Justin Tucker, who suddenly can't make kicks, which is pretty wild to me, but he kept it very simple.
Tuck needs to make kicks. He knows that. That's important. He makes them in practice, and he made the long one later, which is good to see, which means he's still very capable at kick them straight. We'll be good.
Better start making your kicks. But you miss field goals in these close games. They just lost to a team that kicked 6 field goals and still beat them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's why I like pro football a little bit more in terms of sound bites. And there are some college coaches that will let it be known. And right there with John Harbaugh, he wasn't a jerk.
No.
He wasn't disrespectful to Justin Tucker at all. It's completely valid what he just said. He didn't belabor the point. He handled it perfectly. Like, Tuck has to make kicks. He knows that. Yeah. We all know that.
Just like I have to win games, Tuck has to make kicks, or we're done.
Yeah. It's so weird to see. We were talking about that before the show. How long has Justin Tucker been a phenomenal kicker in the NFL?
It feels like forever, and he's destroyed my heart on a couple of occasions.
Yeah.
That's how long he's been around.
When he would walk on the field, you're like, we're screwed. He's money. He doesn't miss. It would be like we're getting ready for the Monday night game. Brandon Aubrey with the Cowboys is phenomenal.
Electric.
It would be like, with what's happening to Tucker right now, it'd be like another decade of Aubrey being automatic.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, he just can't make kicks consistently. You'd be like, what?
Yeah.
What is happening?
The only kick Aubrey missed was the one he needed for the Cowboys to cover the spread against the Giants.
The Giants.
He walked out there. I was like, well, this is as good as gold. He missed.
Isn't that I'm sure you had experiences with that. Gambling Chad days where you need this kick, you need this three-pointer to be made, and it's not made. And every time since then, you're like, oh, now you make that one.
Yeah.
Now you make that one, sure.
Aubrey coming out to kick that field goal is like Steph Curry lining up a three when he's wide open. He's going to make it. No, I'm going to shank it off to the right. Sorry, guys.
And that's what I wonder with Tucker is, yeah, he's getting up there in age. But think of Vinatieri.
Same thing.
Vinatieri kicked forever.
Yeah.
Right?
Mr. Automatic.
Yeah, and so Tucker isn't even that old yet. It's alarming what's happening with him.
Vinatieri was great for two separate franchises. He was great with the Patriots and Colts.
Right. He almost had two careers.
Yeah.
Because he was with the Colts for a long time and really, really good. He got a little iffy at the end.
Yeah.
That was at the very end.
Yeah. But you're right. Going back to the point that in the NFL, and like the Broncos last week against the Chiefs, they played the perfect game. They did everything right, and they even went on a great drive and took 6 minutes off the clock and had 1 second. They got it down to 1 second, and they couldn't block properly to get a 35-yard field goal up. And it cost you because in the NFL, one mistake in these tight games, which are usually one possession, it will come back to haunt you.
It will, and that's that. Credit to the Broncos for it not snowballing.
Yeah, because I thought when they lost that game how devastating it was.
Yeah.
I thought, great, they're going to come out flat and get worked by the Falcons, but they came out and dominated. That surprised me, not so much that they won, but I did not expect them to play a flawless football game. It was wild.
Yeah, that's right. And, man, you think about yesterday, the kicking game, it cost the Bears a win. You know, they had it. They had it won.
Yeah.
It was like 3rd and 18 on that final drive, and they gained maybe like 13 yards, set up 4th and manageable, got the 4th down, another completion, you're in field goal range, you're good to go, blocked. You lose.
Yeah, the Bengals.
Bengals are a great example. Think about Evan McPherson. Dude, missed 2 kicks last night, missed the kick, remember, against the Ravens at home?
Yes.
In overtime?
Yes.
And it's like, those are 2 wins right there. You're above 500, most likely, if he makes a kick last night and makes a kick against the Ravens. You're probably over 500 if that happens.
And I was pulling for the Chargers in that game because the Broncos are going to be battling Cincinnati and the Colts for that 7th and final playoff spot in the AFC. I was really disheartened when Cincinnati made that storm back in the second half.
Man, yeah.
And then when they lined up for that field goal, I was like, great, this is going to suck, and now the Broncos are going to only be a game up. And he went out and missed the kick, and then it went back and forth. The Chargers ended up winning it because I know how much that game, the Bengals, no doubt, are probably going to be looking back at the end of the year, and that missed kick in that one game against the Chargers or the game against the Ravens at home or the game on the road at the Ravens, one of those games is going to prove costly.
Oh, man, yeah. How close were they? Went for 2 against the Ravens. And
I thought that was the right call. Right?
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But you're that close to winning games. They haven't been getting crushed at all.
No.
But these losses are just piling up, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool, we're 4-7.
Yeah. I think Taylor said something, I think after the Raven game, he's like, well, it doesn't feel great to continue to lose games like this. I felt for him, man, because, it's just devastating for those guys.
I loved Burrow, where the question was, something like, is this the most frustrating season you've had? He's like, yeah. And the reporter's like, why would that be? He's like, it's pretty self-explanatory.
All right, we'll come back, and we're going to hit some other random audio from Sunday in the NFL. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, is in studio. Oregon State head coach Trent Bray coming up at 5:20. Man, Brian Noe and I were just talking about tendencies and how these NFL teams, like the film study now it's on a different level. Like you've got players on the sideline now immediately after a play going right to their little Microsoft Surface and reviewing the play on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, back in the old days, they didn't have access to that. You had the still photos that would get printed off and sent down to the sideline. So you're able to look at what happened on a snap or on a spot on a field goal, whatever the case may be. They're getting constant data.
Yeah.
I just love that.
And I don't know if it was Xavier McKinney from the Packers yesterday who just like Gronk spiked his tablet. But yeah, now you're seeing it in live time and you can tell immediately whether you're a quarterback and it's like wrong read, dude was wide open, I just missed him or what have you. You can see that and man, instant confirmation that you completely screwed up. And that's why they get Gronk spiked every now and then.
You brought up another good thing too, Noe, that I love is that you call BS on these football teams where they'll miss a field goal at the end of a game, and they always say the same thing, like, well, it's not on the kicker. There were several plays that we screwed up on. It's like, no, it really was the kicker that screwed up there.
Oh, totally, man. You'll hear that all the time. You'll see it the rest of this regular season, certainly in the playoffs. Let's just say it comes down to a final field goal, because we were talking about Justin Tucker, right, missing a couple of kicks in the first half. And you'll hear coaches, players, it wasn't just that kick. It didn't come down to that kick. There are many plays that impacted the game. It's like, yeah, the hell it did. It came down to that kick. Granted, we all understand if you made the play before halftime or that one missed opportunity in the third quarter, maybe it wouldn't have come down to the kick. But guess what? You didn't make it. The other team didn't make some play. It all sorted out to it's down to this moment.
Yeah.
Can you make the kick or not? So I don't want to hear it didn't come down to that one final play. Yes, it did.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, that stuff drives you crazy. The only time I've seen that where the coach came out and basically pointed out the kicker was Kenny Dillingham, who's now the head coach at Arizona State, was the offensive coordinator at Oregon before he took over there. They lost a game at Cincinnati this year, and they've had issues with the kickers all year. And they missed a couple of key kicks that would have made it a one-possession game, and they ended up losing that game. After the game, he's like, hey, I don't know what we have to do, but we have to find a way to make kicks. And he goes, we're going to hold open tryouts starting this week. He came right out and said it. And then the next day he followed up with a tweet and said, I realize that when I talk about the kicking game, I'm talking about one guy. I apologize for that, but we're still going to have open tryouts.
Sorry to be throwing him under the bus, but
He was losing his mind. He's like, we can't make a kick.
And he was so totally Kenny Dillingham, just like
high energy.
High
we gotta
energy.
Make a kick.
We got to make kicks. We're holding open tryouts. And then you can't quite hear the reporter, and he's like, yeah, dead serious. Open tryouts.
That's so great, man. I love that because I don't know how coaches don't crack more in those spots. I heard Steve Young today where he was asked, are kickers football players? And he just said, I would not want that job. He goes, it's such a weird sport where you have a kicker. He doesn't practice with the rest of the guys. He only focuses on his kicking, and then he's sitting there on the sideline for 3 hours, hasn't done anything, and then all of a sudden you bring him in to kick a game winner. He goes, I don't want that job. That's crazy.
It really is.
He respected how crazy of a job it is.
It is. It's such a demanding job. And that's the thing. Think about how Justin Tucker feels right now.
Yeah.
And that's a regular season game.
Yeah. He feels horrible.
Scott Norwood with the Bills or whatever. But missing a kick in the Super Bowl, right? Think how that would eat at you just because of the nature of football.
Yeah.
You're watching these dudes for 3 hours battle. This is a physical battle. They're coming over to the sideline limping. Their shoulder got separated, all these injuries. And now it's on you. We win if I can make this kick.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it hooked a little left, didn't go in. How horrible you would feel when your teammates have been battling, scratching and clawing like that for 3 hours. It'd be the worst.
Well, to your point about how ridiculous it is when they come out and say, oh, it came down to more than just the kick. Can you imagine a kicker like Tucker coming out after the game saying, hey, I know
That's great.
Look, I realize I missed a couple of kicks out there today, but the reality is if my quarterback wouldn't have thrown a couple of picks, or if our offense did a better job of moving the ball in the red zone, I wouldn't have been in that position, so screw them. He's never going to say that.
Perfectly said.
Right?
Really. Yes, because how obnoxious would that sound?
We would just absolutely kill that
we
guy.
Would bury that guy. It didn't come down to that one kick. You know, if Josh Allen made that throw to the wide open guy, it was not even. Don't even need to make that kick.
Gosh, I pray a kicker does that someday. Hey, look, man, I'm not going to make all of them, but you got to. I didn't throw 3 picks out there.
That's
today.
right. Yeah. No, you got to do your job. You got to make the kick, man, no matter what.
Oh, it's so good. This NFL season's great. By the way, Aaron Rodgers talking about the fumble at the end of the game. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Not a very good play. I was getting rushed. Knew Conk was out there somewhere. I was trying to throw it forward. I don't know if I got hit or it just didn't come off right. But I was trying to throw an incompletion. Pretty bad play.
It doesn't get much more miserable than the Jets right now, does it?
That's rough, man. That's the expectations, the reality. You know, that's.
Wait, if you're the Jets, would you bring him back next year? Assuming he wants to come back and play, which I think he will. Would you bring him back if you're the Jets, or would you move on in a different direction and allow him to go to a different team?
Man, it's. I think you would have to move on because he's not your quarterback of the future.
Yeah.
And what are the chances that you're going to have great success with the guy next year? I just don't see that happening. So and I don't know the contract situation. I don't know if they're invested already in another season, like with guaranteed cash. I don't know that for sure, but I would put it this way. They'd have to be greatly committed to the next season. Where it's like, does it really make sense to reset the clock or let's just give it another go one more year? I'll put it this way. I don't think they're so invested. Like, you have to be greatly invested to run it back. I think you're better off just planning for the future because he's not your future.
No. Oh, my goodness. What a disaster.
Horrible, man.
He rips up his Achilles and doesn't play last year, and this year's just been a complete train wreck.
It has, and we all know the injury wasn't his fault, but man, this year, and that's a real defense with a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you could just see the potential. And now it's like, let's see, what's their updated season win total? 5.5 wins.
Oh, we're gonna get to that coming up next. Brian has got the updated season win totals. We'll compare that to the beginning of the year?
Yeah.
And how it's changed.
I also, Chad, I have gotten a tweet about some of my storage unit belongings.
Oh, good. You got to give us some of that info, too.
I've got good and bad news, and I also have one of the top phrases that no man ever wants to hear in life.
Oh, good. We need to talk?
We definitely, that's on the list. I got another one, too.
All right, good. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio in studio. This is fun, man. I'm glad you're here. All right, more with Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio in just a moment. Trailblazers on fire right now. 3 straight wins. Shaden Sharp, back-to-back games of 30 or more. They defeated the Hawks yesterday, 114-110. They kick off a 5-game roadie Wednesday in Oklahoma City against the Thunder. That game will tip off at 5. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 3 here on 620 Rip City Radio, your home of the Portland Trailblazers. It is presented by Coors Light. Chris will have Courtside Monday coming up following the Rip City Drive at 6. Oregon Ducks get a bye week. They're first in 8 weeks before they take on Washington. Indiana and Ohio State will match up on Saturday at 9 on Fox. The winner of that game is headed to the Big Ten title game. Oregon State will meet Washington State Saturday for Senior Day. Trent Bray is going to join the show coming up at 5:20. And Houston at Dallas. Monday Night Football coming up in 15 minutes on ESPN. The Texans are favored by 7. All right, Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio in studio. Coming up in 20 minutes, Oregon State head coach Trent Bray is going to join the show. And then Chris Burkhardt with Courtside Monday coming up at 6 o'clock. The Trailblazers on fire right now with 3 straight wins and get a couple of days off before they kick off the 5-game road trip in Oklahoma City. I think Travis told me they're going to take off tomorrow to head on their trip, and we'll see how they do against one of the best teams in the NBA with the Thunder. You just brought up a good point, Brian, that if you were doing a show, you're watching a basketball game right now, we got Monday Night Football on in the studio, and for you, it would be almost impossible to wager on a game and do a show at the same time because you would be so interested in what your money is doing at the moment that it would be hard to focus on the show. I would concur with that.
That's right, man. I've got Bulls at the Pistons cranked up right now, and I thought about getting involved in a first half over, which is probably the right side based on the way these teams are going.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I know me. I would start focusing on that game so much where I'm distracted, and it's like I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So we'll pick another spot.
Oh, my goodness. All right, you've got something interesting. Speaking of win totals in Las Vegas, you went through and have kind of done a comparison and contrast of the win totals in the NFL to start the year and where the teams were at, and then the updated win totals for where we're at based on basically half a season being played. What have you found out?
Yeah, so I'll give you a couple of examples of the teams that exceeded expectations. So if I just said right now, who's the surprise team in terms of what most expected and what we're getting right now, what would you throw out there in the NFL?
The Commanders.
The Commanders, I would too. That's a big one. There's one other team that's exceeded expectations in terms of season win total even more. So the Washington Commanders, before the season started, their season win total was 6.5.
Okay.
Right now, as we speak, it's 10.5.
My 2 other choices would be Pittsburgh or Arizona.
Okay, so Pittsburgh is +3. They were 8.5 to begin the season. They're now 11.5.
Wow.
And Arizona, they started at 6.5. They're now at 9.5. So both Arizona and Pittsburgh, 3 wins, right? They're 3 wins higher now than expected before the season started. The team that's exceeded expectations the most in terms of season win total, before the season started, 6.5 wins. Right now, their season win total, 11.5 wins. That's the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, yeah, the Vikings.
Yeah. How crazy is that? Their season win total was 6.5. Their record right now, Chad, is 8-2. They've exceeded it already. They're just going for extra credit at this point.
And I have to admit, look, I thought Darnold would be okay playing for O'Connell, but I did not expect them to be this good.
Right.
I did not expect it. Did you?
No, I didn't think 8-2 at this time. I remember before the season, I'll do the weekend show with Jeff Schwartz as one of the guys. Shout out to the Ducks. But Schwartzy was saying, hey, man, the Vikings have dudes on this roster. And I'm like, okay. I never thought they got dudes with Sam Darnold. Like, how good is this team going to be? And they're 8-2 right now. So shout out to them.
Yeah.
Exceeding expectations. Now, the teams, Chad, that have not lived up to expectations, who would you say?
The Jets.
The Jets are right there. There are 3 teams that they're -4 in the win total department, right? From where it started to where it is right now.
Cincinnati.
Cincy is on there. So the Jets, the Cowboys, and the Bears.
Wow.
All of them were at 9.5 wins before the season. You could bet the over or the under. Right now, they've gone from 9.5 to 5.5 wins on the season. That's the win total you could bet on right here, right now, if you wanted to.
Are you surprised that the Bears kept Eberflus going into the season?
I am. They should have let him go. Because
what a big mistake that was.
They were an underperforming team, and he was a lame duck coach. And it's like, what are the chances that the Bears are going to hit the ground running and have so much success that you're going to bring him back? And if you don't have that success and you have to clean house, you're restarting the clock with Caleb Williams with a whole new regime. Like, what are you doing? Just reset it with him being your new draft pick.
Yeah, I just thought, underperforming coach, defensive coach, you're getting Caleb Williams. Just go out and retool the entire coaching staff and find the guy that you think is going to fit best with Williams so he can grow and develop, because that's your number one priority now.
That's right. I think that's what they should have done, and that's what they're going to do a little bit late. By the way, this is funny. So the time I looked at it, Bulls and Pistons, first half total 123.5.
Yeah.
They ended with 122.
Wow.
And Zach LaVine had a last-second 3 that hit the rim, didn't go in.
So there are a lot of people gripping right up until the end.
That's right.
Isn't
Right
that
up
wild?
into it. Yeah. And, okay, so the 2 teams, for whatever reason, Jacksonville is not listed. Their current season win total. I guess because we don't know if Trevor Lawrence is coming back. Too much uncertainty, so it's not listed right now. These are all numbers on BetMGM. There's so many different sports books, and their odds and numbers might have they might have been a little bit different. But I'm assuming Jacksonville was right where the Browns were. There's probably about 8.5 wins expected. Right now, the Browns are at 3.5 wins. So that's a 5-win difference right there.
Real quick on the Browns. So I guess the way I envision this season playing out, they'll go into the draft and take a quarterback, right? Like if they have the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, you probably take Shador, and then you start that transition to push Watson out the door, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. Because
Meaning I don't think Watson's going to play another down for the Browns, or at least that would surprise me. But then again, they're a dumb franchise.
And there's still so much money with that guy.
Couldn't you bring him back, Watson? You draft your quarterback, sit him, and let Watson play another year, even though that's a bad idea. But if you feel like you had to do it because you got all that money committed to him, just keep that quarterback sitting on the bench, play out the year with Watson next year, and then after that, you can survive by moving on from him with the cap hit.
Yeah, you could. I'll put it this way. The money that you owe Deshaun, that would not, if I'm the Browns, prevent me from drafting the next guy.
No, you have to.
And I like your idea where if for whatever reason it made sense to sit your guy.
Yeah.
You would have Deshaun in there for 1 year, and then you would go with your top draft pick. But the way the money is right now, that's the benefit where the rookie wage scale, these rookies, they're not making the guaranteed money they once were.
Yeah.
Sam Bradford's making $50 million before he played it down. That's not the way it is right now. So I think that makes it a lot easier. If you're still committed to a guy like Deshaun Watson with all this guaranteed money, that's not going to prevent you from drafting the next quarterback. It's the same thing money-wise as drafting a defensive end. Like, why wouldn't you draft a quarterback? You're going to need one.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that's weird. And then, I mean, is Jacksonville going to fire Doug Peterson now? They're entering into a bye week, so is it going to come now, or are they going to wait till the end of the year?
I don't know. That's
right. They're embarrassing.
The relationship with ownership, and is that what they want to do? Do they think they benefit from doing that? I thought they would run them earlier in the year. We were making jokes where they played those 2 games in London.
Yeah.
Where it's like he was going to have to fly back on his own before the second game there, and they've still stuck him. They've still been writing it out with him. I don't know. What's your guess? What do you think? Does he can't last to the end of the year.
No, he'll get moved out. My guess is he'll get moved out before the end of the year. If they were going to move him in the bye week, it would have happened already. I would thought, like yesterday or today. But it hasn't happened yet. That team's troubling to me because just a couple of years ago, they had the great playoff comeback win over the Chargers. Then they go in and play pretty well against the Chiefs. And you thought, okay, they're ascending.
Yeah.
They missed the playoffs the next year, and now they've just bottomed out.
It's crazy how bad it's gotten because when Peterson took over for Urban Meyer, everybody thought and said the same thing. Like, wow, look at this coach. Look at this team with the real head coach.
Yeah.
And they had some success early on, and now look at them, man. They're basically Urban Meyer.
It's unwatchable.
Urban Meyer has to watch Jacksonville like, wow, look at Jacksonville now. I thought this coach was taking over, and look how much better they are. They suck.
They're worse right now under Peterson than at any point in time in Herb's 1 year with the Jags.
I never thought about that. Urban Meyer has to be getting a kick out of Jacksonville's season here, right?
Gosh, it's so weird to see guys like that struggle. Herb is like the greatest college football coach that I've seen, except for Nick Saban, and yet as a pro coach, he's awful.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand
Nick
how it
Saban
can be
is a
that
football
bad.
genius, but he wasn't exactly great in the NFL.
Right.
Neither was Steve Spurrier, but he's a college football genius.
Yeah.
That happens to a lot of those guys.
By the way, I've got an update on the storage unit for
give it
you.
to me. What do you got?
Okay, so this is the phrase that no guy wants to hear. This is on the short list of all-time horrible phrases. So initially, good news. Christy, shout out.
Yeah.
Trying to get rid of my dining room set before I skip town in a week. She writes, I need a dining set with 4 or 5 exclamation points. That's good.
Yeah.
Right?
That's urgent.
She needs this, right? So I sent her a picture of the dining room set, and I wrote, for the love of all that's holy, please buy this thing. She writes back, LOL. Now here's the phrase, Chad. Dang, not big enough.
Wow.
It's not a good phrase. Not a good phrase to hear right
Now, the
there.
other phrase I came up with was, we need to talk.
Yep, that's on there.
Not big enough. They're both bad.
It's really bad.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a tale of the tape on that. We need to talk. Will send shivers through your entire body.
I didn't get that exact phrase. I've just gotten like, that's all you got? That's just as bad.
No, I haven't gotten that phrase either until now with the dining room set, but that's
maybe she's got a bigger family.
Possibly, you know?
All right. Well, when we come back, Trent Bray, head coach at Oregon State, is going to join us. We'll get his take on what happened at Air Force, and then we'll look ahead to Washington State. Got to be a special moment for him. His dad coached with the Cougs in 2 different stints and was there for years, so I would imagine it means a lot to him to go back to Pullman and have a chance to coach, bringing his own team to town. So Trent Bray's coming up next. So are you going to stay through Thanksgiving? City Drive, the Oregon State Beavers will reset, and they're going to meet Washington State this weekend at Reeser. And joining us right now is head coach Trent Bray. And, Coach, good afternoon. I appreciate your time.
Oh, no problem.
Before we get to, this past weekend and stuff, I wanted to ask you about going up to Pullman and having a chance or getting a chance to take on Washington State this weekend at Reeser. Your dad was a coach on that staff and part of Washington State, 2 different stints, and he was on some of the exciting teams that I watched when I was younger, which I thought was pretty cool. And I'm sure you have memories from those days as well. But how neat is it for you now to get a chance to take your own team up and get a chance to take on Washington State?
Yeah, it's a lot of history with both schools. I grew up in Pullman, and when my dad was at Washington State for most of my childhood, and then obviously playing and coaching here for a long time. So there's a lot of connection with both schools.
That's pretty awesome. Now, do you have any memories of hanging out at practice when you were younger, or your dad taking you to practice, or getting a chance to watch games? Like, what kind of memories do you have back from those days?
Oh yeah, I was always at practice and hanging around. Then watched every game from the sideline, and so I was around that program and his players a lot.
Did your dad show you how to break down film and look at the details at a younger age?
Yeah, we used to watch. I'd always bring in high school, I'd bring my film home, and he'd go through everything with me and teach me how to read keys and all that stuff. So yeah, I got ever since I was a freshman in high school, a good education on that.
That's pretty sweet. For me, my dad used to take me on business trips when I was younger, and I'd hang out with him, and I always wanted to be like my dad. But did you know or get any inclination at a younger age when you were spending time around your dad and he was coaching, he coached for years and years, did you get that bug or get an idea that you wanted to be a coach at some point?
Yeah, I've known for a long time. I'd say probably earliest I remember, like, that's what I want to do is probably 8th grade or freshman in high school, where I was like, I'd like to do that, whenever I get an opportunity to.
Hey, Coach, this is Brian Noe. I'm just hanging in with my guy, Chad Doing, today. I love what you said about learning to read keys. Like, can you remember those days and what blew your mind initially when someone's saying, hey, you got to look for this and watch for that? What's something that you're like, holy cow, I never knew that beforehand?
Yeah, it just how simple it got once you knew where to put your eyes, and what those things told you is really what kind of surprised me and blew my mind a little bit was, you try to see everything and you end up seeing nothing. If you can focus your eyes here where they need to be to do your job, how simple the game becomes.
That's great. We're talking with the Oregon State head coach Trent Bray. Ben Branson, as you know, obviously didn't play. Do you have any update on his status as you get ready for Washington State?
Yeah, he should be okay. We'll find out more tomorrow morning when he gets reassessed, but right now it looks positive.
Oh, that's good news. If he can't go, if he was unable to play against Washington State, what would be your plan at quarterback?
We'd work both Giovanni and Jabari in practice, and then make a game time decision based on what we see in practice.
One other player, do you have an update on the status of Melvin Jordan?
Kind of similar situation. He looks good, and hoping when he gets reassessed tomorrow morning that he'll be ready to go.
So what was your message to your team? Obviously, you want your guys to continue to work, and that's what you're going to do. But what was your message to the team after the game on Saturday?
The biggest thing is, we got to understand we're in the situation because we put ourselves here with the things that we've done or the lack of the things that we've done. And to stay together, and the only way to get through this hard time is to go to work and continue to believe and trust in the process, and understand that if you continue to do that, it will flip and the results will come.
Can you recall on times from your past, either as a player or a coach, where you were in the middle of darkness or a difficult time and it looked impossible, but as you continue to grind, you eventually find your way out and find that success?
Yeah, I've done it a number of times. I remember as a player in 2004, we started the season, I think, 1-4, and then ended up winning 6 of our last 7. And then, 3 times here, came back in 2012 after 11 was not a good year, and won 9 games. And then obviously the rebuild that we had here with Jonathan took a couple of years, but we got it going. And so I've been through it a couple times, and that's been the biggest takeaway I've had is guys just continuing to work and believe, and the results will come because I think the right guys are here.
Are those examples from your past that you'll use when you're talking to your players to help them see the pathway that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think drawing on past experiences, so there's physical and proof that they can see that this has happened and you can come out of this is always a positive thing, not just blind faith, but understanding like this has happened before, I've experienced it, and you just got to trust it.
Hey, Coach, it might sound like a stupid question, but I don't think it is. Which is a tougher challenge as a head coach, where it's a challenging season, or if you guys were 10-0 right now? You know what I mean? I think about Nick Saban talking about rat poison and maybe the players get a little bit full of themselves. Which do you think is more challenging, a struggling season or a perfect season to be a head coach?
Oh, that's a good question. I've only been through one, so as a head coach, but I think in general, I think I talk to the guys all the time about not believing what you read, both positive and negative. You're not as good as they say you are, and you're not as bad as they say you are. And staying focused on the process of what you got to get done, and not buying into other people's opinion of you.
We're talking with Oregon State head coach Trent Bray. I've had a chance to meet and speak to a number of them, but one thing that's always impressed me about the group that you have, the senior class, and they're getting ready for their senior day coming up on Saturday. Can you just talk about the senior class and what they mean to you, Coach? And they've been through everything from, the foundation being laid to experiencing some success and now going through some difficult trials this season. What's that group like, and what does this Saturday coming up mean to you for them?
Yeah, just number one, very appreciative of that group and their willingness to stick it out here and stay and believe in this place and what we're doing here. But yeah, they've been through a ton. They've been through a rebuild, saw that rebuild happen, and then they're kind of going, unfortunately, the end of their career here, going through a rebuild again. But what they've done and the work that they've done and the leadership that they've had will impact this place in a positive way moving forward.
All right, when you look at the film, what does it tell you about Jake Dickert and his crew there with Washington State and the job they're doing?
They're doing a great job. They play hard. They're physical. They're tough. And then on offense, they got tremendous talent. They got two really, really good receivers and an excellent quarterback that can hurt you both throwing the ball and running the ball. And they use them well. I mean, they're playing to their players' strengths, and they do a nice job on both sides of the ball. But being a defensive guy, I tend to watch that offense a lot, and they're doing a great job. So,
what do you think is going to be the main key for you to have success against the Cougs? What do you need to stop? Number one.
It's really Washington State's another one of those teams that explosive plays are how they put a lot of points on the board. It's doing a great job of keeping things in front of you and eliminating explosive plays down the field. So they have to, continue to put plays together to score.
Trent Bray, or head coach at Oregon State, they're getting ready to take on Washington State this weekend. Hey, Coach, really appreciate the time and your insight, and we wish you the best this weekend. Good luck against the Cougs.
I appreciate that.
There you go. There's Trent Bray, head coach at Oregon State. I respect him coming on, Brian. It's tough when you're in the middle of difficulties, and he's in his first year as a head coach, and he's experiencing the losses. That's got to be so tough for someone that's ultra competitive.
Absolutely it is. And, man, that's the thing. Think about that. This is your first crack at it, being a head coach, and you just got to weather it. It's rough. And I think the other thing is sometimes you just can't come out and say what the truth is.
Yeah.
Right? You can't come out as a head coach and say, hey guys, I'm good. I know what I do. It's just we got a team of hacks right now. You know what I mean? Like
you can't say that.
Come out and throw your guys under the bus.
Well, the reality is that they are in a transition year. So they had some very good players to begin the year, but they're not deep because they don't have the depth like some of the other top-line schools are. So when you suffer major injuries, the guys that you have coming in to fill those spots, they're not able to get it done on a consistent level.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. That's the problem. Brenden, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting, Chad, that, it goes back years. I've covered this team for almost a decade. I've never seen a Beaver team more injured than this year.
Yeah.
And like that, it happens, but they are brutally injured this year.
Yeah. And see, Trent Bray, he's the type of guy where he's not going to admit, he's too proud to say, hey, I'm screwed. We got too many injuries. But that's the reality of it.
Right.
He
Right.
doesn't want to make excuses, but that's the truth. They're just shredded by injuries.
Yeah. And look, man, this might be a weird comparison, but the Tyson fight on Friday.
Yeah.
They asked him about his knee.
Yeah.
Like, hey, is your knee okay? Because you couldn't move at all. And Tyson said something to the effect of, I mean, it's not good, but I was in there. I would never use it as an excuse. You can't. You can't.
No.
Even though it's completely valid, you can never use injuries as an excuse or even cite them.
Yeah.
And to Brendan's point, absolutely valid. And that's a reason why the struggles are the way they are. But you can't cite it because it's going to come off as an excuse every time.
But like, you're a Dolphin fan, right? The reason why their record is what it is because Tua went down.
Sure.
And if he doesn't go down, they're right in the thick of things. But
Yeah.
that's the truth.
It is the truth. But that's for guys like you and me to say.
Yeah.
It's not for the head coach of the team
No.
to say because it's just like, oh, cry me a river.
Yeah.
It never works.
And you're right. No other coach wants to hear it because they all deal with the injuries, right? Like the Chiefs last year were decimated by injuries, but yet they found a way to get it done.
That's right. Yeah.
The 49ers right now, they're decimated by injuries, but you know what? They still feel like they should be able to go out and find a way to get it done. We can't be dropping games at home because we don't have a spy on Geno Smith and he runs it in for a touchdown.
That's right. And that's the thing is there are teams that have won numerous games with backup quarterbacks. The Cowboys are a good example, right? Remember Cooper Rush a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
I think he was 4-1 as a starter. Well, the team was way better at that point. But that's where it comes home, where there's more for you to control than just, hey, we had some injury, bad luck, and that's where it begins and ends. There's more to it than that. But it's hard as a head coach to not cite something that's directly contributing and out of your control, which is the injury bug.
Yeah. The Cowboys are definitely going to fire Mike McCarthy at some point. Maybe they'll go through the whole year and then let him go. Do you think Belichick will go to Dallas? I guess the question is, where's Belichick going to end up? Because the problem is, I thought it was going to be Philly, but Nick Sirianni's winning too many games to get himself fired right now.
I know it. I think Belichick would fit well because it's East Coast team.
East Coast, and they're a well-run organization.
Great roster still.
Yeah.
Howie Roseman doing a good job.
He could win games with them.
Absolutely he could, but it's like they're winning a little bit too much, maybe, for Belichick. And I heard his name come up with the Jacksonville job. Like, Jacksonville for Belichick? There's got to be something better than that. But how about that? The Cowboys, remember they ran the fake punt against the Falcons?
Yeah.
And it didn't work?
Yeah.
They went fake punt again tonight. It didn't work. I actually appreciate the guts of it, of like, they'll never see this coming. They don't think we're going to run it again. They did, and it didn't work.
I love that when coaches got to play with, like, I know this play is going to work, man. It's genius, and it never works for them.
Yeah, it didn't quite work out, but they got away with it. Stroud threw an interception. So
I want to see Belichick in Dallas because that would be such watchable television.
It would. It would be such great football drama. And to think of the Jerry Jones-Belichick dynamic, like Jerry Jones is the exact opposite of what Bill Belichick is all about.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick is business. We're on to Cincinnati. Do your job. Jerry Jones is about the sizzle and salesmanship and the whole presentation. I would love to see those two try to coexist.
And you know how much it would drive Belichick crazy because I don't care who he hires as coach. Jerry's still going to hold court.
Oh, yeah.
And go on radio.
Oh, yeah.
And talk openly.
Yep.
And it would drive Bill crazy.
It would. And I think Belichick would drive Jerry a little bit crazy, too.
He would ignore him. Walk by him in the hallway and not say a word to him.
He would just have it. So the press conference. So Jerry had this. I don't care about that.
Yeah, because I don't know how many times this year where Mike McCarthy's press conferences usually start out with, hey, Jerry said this, what you take? And you can't throw the owner under the bus, so you just have to take it.
Right. But Belichick wouldn't.
No.
He'd just be like, I really don't care.
He's not the coach of the team, and he's not really involved in those matters.
They would drive each other crazy.
Oh, I need to see it happen.
That would be a phenomenal mixture.
Here's the thing, and you know this is true. Like if Belichick takes the Dallas job, let me ask you a question. Do you think it's 100% guaranteed that Belichick will be coaching again next year?
I wouldn't say 100%, but I would be shocked if it's a second straight year and he doesn't have a gig.
As soon as I saw him on the beach with the mermaid and the Halloween costume, I was like, oh, gosh, he needs football bad.
He needs to get back
so
in
bad.
there, man. He doesn't know what to do with himself
Oh,
right
no.
now.
When he gets suckered into that kind of stuff, like the guy needs football bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see him coach. But you know as well as I do that if you go and reinvent yourself in Dallas and he was to lead them to a championship, he would hit instant legend status, and he would probably start talking junk to Tom Brady on the podium after the game if they won it.
What do you think is better for Belichick, right? Let's say he went to Dallas and he did well but didn't win it all. Or if he went to Jacksonville and they went from the gutter to respectability, what would do more for him?
Oh, that's a good question. The thing that will do the best for him is winning a championship.
Absolutely.
Because he can prove, just like Brady did, that I can do it without him.
Sure. But let's just say that doesn't happen.
I would say if you were to take Dallas to an NFC title game, that would do more for you than retooling the Jaguars. Because you're going to get the attention. Dallas is just that brand. Whether we like it or not, you get all the attention if you do good things with them. And you get all the attention if you do bad things with them.
Right. And I think because he's always going to be linked to Brady.
Always.
No matter what. And if he took Jacksonville from, were they going to win 3 or 4 games this year? Maybe.
Yeah.
Let's say they're a 3-win team. He takes them from 3 wins to 9, 10 wins, and they fizzle out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
No one cares.
Maybe Tampa should fire Bowles and then hire Belichick, and then Belichick can win a championship with Tampa.
I love that.
I'd be there for that, fellas.
That would be fantastic. That's a great idea.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. More with Brenden Noe, Fox Sports Radio, Rip City Drive. Hey, Bino, do you notice that one of the things I love when I listen to you on Fox Sports Radio, I'm a big fan of Jeff Schwartz as well, former Duck. I love his understanding, and I've worked with, former pros. Michael Holton will come in studio and talk ball. I've been around Lorenzo Neal a lot and all these guys. You think you know the ball until you talk to some of these guys that played the game and you realize like their understanding because they've been between the lines. It's just on a different level.
It really is. It's like we've been watching football for a long, long time and played at lower levels and all that. And it's like, you know a good amount about football, but it's not like some dude who played 8 years in the NFL and the preparation and the X's and O's, and they'll start rattling stuff off. Coaches, right? We're just talking to Coach Bray, and he's rattling off learning keys and studying film. This is your job. They understand it on a level where we're just like, it makes you feel like, I really don't know anything about football.
I just learned the other day, I didn't know that quarterbacks did this, but you know how receivers will run like an in route or a curl route. The quarterback will place the ball a lot of times on the side in which they're supposed to turn. So if the defender's coming in from one side, the quarterback will hit him so the receiver catches and knows which way to turn to get away from the defender.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's pretty high level to place the ball, and it communicates with your receiver which way he needs to turn once he starts to take off.
Yeah. And there's always another side to that where the receiver turns the wrong way. And the quarterback throws a pick and looks like the moron.
Yeah.
And you're like, it wasn't actually my fault at all.
Oh, yeah. Well, going back to things that people can't say, right? The quarterback could easily throw a lot of receivers under the bus because they're thrown to a spot.
Oh.
They have to anticipate, and you have all these anticipatory throws in the NFL where it's all timed out. And if the receiver runs the wrong route and the quarterback lets fly, and it gets picked off, there's a lot of times where that had nothing to do with the quarterback, but it's the wrong route. But he can't, after the game, say, hey, it's on me, man. I got to be better.
That's the rough thing, man. Like, we've seen interceptions before where it just bounces right off the guy. And what was it? The Jets is a few weeks ago. I think it was Garrett Wilson along the sideline. Perfectly thrown ball by Aaron Rodgers. Bounces right off his big number 5 jersey and into a Steelers defender's arms. You know what I mean? And that goes right on Aaron Rodgers' stats. You won't even remember it. At the end of this year, give it 5 years. You think you're going to remember which interceptions weren't his fault? It's not the way it works.
I've been going back only because it pops up in my recommended list on YouTube and watching some old Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And the one that came up the other night, a couple of nights ago, was the Pittsburgh-Dallas game played down in Arizona. The last Super Bowl that Aikman and Irvin and Smith won.
The Neil O'Donnell catastrophe.
So I went back and I was curious to see what happened, and I still have no idea what Neil O'Donnell was doing on those 2 throws that were picked off by Larry Brown.
Yeah.
They're so bad that I can understand why people thought, well, he's throwing the game.
Right, yeah.
Like, those were really bad. And you know what's crazy? Like, watching that game, Pittsburgh was in a position to win that game.
Absolutely they were. They were making a comeback. They were right
starting
back in
to control the line of scrimmage.
That was the old Bam Morris Steelers, right? Was he still there? Yeah. It was too bad because
they had the ball with like less than a quarter to go in the fourth to win the game. And he got picked.
I know it.
It's like, what are you doing?
And now it's just, that was one of the 3 rings for the triplets and all that is just a footnote is the Neil O'Donnell stuff. But, yeah, that stuff swings games, man.
Oh, yeah. I don't understand those picks. There's certain plays you're like, what was going on there? I don't know. I can't explain that one. And neither could the announcers at the time it happened either.
Right. I get it, too, where, listen, there are some interceptions where your eyes get so locked on your target, your receiver, that you just don't see the middle linebacker literally right in the path.
Yeah.
There's no chance this is going to be complete. I get that, but some throws, it's just like, dude, this is like grade school stuff. What were you doing?
Yeah.
And, that's a rough one, man.
All
Can't
right.
live that one down.
I want to ask you a Trailblazer question before you go.
Yeah.
You brought this up. The Blazers have won 3 games in a row. And it's been the young guys, Shaden Sharp and Donovan Clingan, Tamani Kamara, the young guys that they hope are a part of the future core that have played extremely well. But there's a lot of fans who are also looking out at the draft. Cooper Kupp and the rest of those guys are going to be at the top. It's going to be a rich draft, super rich draft in terms of talent. So my reaction to that was, it's like, yeah, it's tough if you want to focus on draft position, but early in the season, if the young guys are going to play like that and you have a chance to continue to grow and develop that talent, then you just take the wins as they come. It's okay.
Yeah.
I don't know because you can't just start, if you've got veterans under contract who are here to play, you can't just start throwing the season under the bus right out of the gate, right? So I'm not bothered by the wins because you're seeing young guys develop, which is a good thing. So how do you come out on that?
Yeah, to me, and you might disagree with this, the best of both worlds for me, if I'm like a living, breathing, dying Blazers fan, like I'm hardcore.
Yeah.
The best of both worlds for me would be the young guys are developing, yet they're still losing games.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to fault any Blazer fan for getting excited because they're winning games.
Yeah.
How can you not? You go to a game and it's thrilling. They beat the Hawks. They have this big comeback. How can you not stand up and cheer? It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about the long-term future, the best for the Blazers is to have as high a pick as possible.
Yeah.
Hopefully the number 1 pick.
Always.
And the wins get in the way of that. So I'm not discouraged by the young guys developing at all. That's a great thing. But if you're winning too many games along with that hurts your chances going forward.
Yeah, we don't need a 10-game winning streak.
That's right.
And
yeah.
the good thing is they play Oklahoma City on Wednesday, so they'll probably get back on track in that game because Thunder are tough.
You would think so.
You would think so. I'll tell you who's living high. Dylan Gabriel was at the game yesterday, the Blazer game. Like less than 24 hours after he had just played Wisconsin, and he's out there. He's like the toast of the town now. He's got these Oregon footballs that he's autographing and then launching up into the stands. Perfect spirals. And that's all I was watching. I was like, dude, it must be great to be Dylan Gabriel right now.
I randomly saw a picture of our guy Chris Burkhart with his picture with him. And he had his hair down like he was the bassist and Slayer over there. I love the look from Chris Burkhart.
Hey, Burkhart, how did you say that went down? He went up to just ask Dylan, hey, can I get a picture for social? And then you said his lady was like, hey, I'll take a picture of you guys. How'd that go down?
It was hilarious. I saw him, and I'm like, hey, go Ducks. And he laughed at me. And I'm like, hey, I work for Rip City Radio here with the Blazers. Can I get a picture for our social? Because I'm trying to be professional. You don't ask for photos and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, yeah, not a problem. So he jumps up, and as he does, his girlfriend, takes the phone from my hand. No joke. She's like, oh, I'll take it for you guys. And then I'm like, okay. So I took a photo, and then I got it. And then he sits back down, and I'm like, okay, I know this is awkward, but, can I get a picture of just you for our social? And he's like, yeah, not a problem. So I did it again.
Wow.
I didn't ask him for a picture with him. She just inferred, and it was kind of funny.
But he was hella cool, wasn't he?
Oh, he was great. He was awesome. A lot of people kind of stick their nose up at you when you even talk to him, but he wasn't. He was super chill.
Yeah. No, that's always awesome, man. They have that saying, don't meet your heroes.
Yeah.
It's always cool when a dude like that, he's in the thick of the Heisman race. He's the quarterback, the number 1 team in the country. And he acts like that. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, I had the same fear. I had a chance to meet Elway when I was 21.
Oh, man. And you're like, don't ruin this for me, man.
Yeah, because he didn't understand. I'm walking up to the guy that I love more than anyone. And I thought, if he's an a-hole, it's going to ruin me.
Oh.
Thankfully, he was cool, and so I walked away loving him even more. But it was a dicey proposition.
So what happened? What was the whole thing?
I was volunteering for the Neil Lomax quarterback shootout in this golf tournament, and I went to the banquet the night before the tournament. And so I knew he was going to be there. And so I approached him and introduced myself and told him what I was doing. And I had a Sports Illustrated with him on the cover, and I said, hey, would you mind signing this for me? He goes, oh, I'd love to. And then he took it and signed it, and he shook my hand, and he was cool.
That's awesome.
So he gave me 2 minutes of greatness, and I was like, thank God that he was cool to me because it would have crushed me, man.
Oh, man, it would have. I had I always liked Kobe, but it wasn't like my John Elway.
Yeah.
But I got to interview Kobe in person.
Yes.
For 1 minute, and it was this whole story where I was just getting audio for the flagship radio station, and Kobe was there. He was just holding court, talking to everybody, and I felt like I had to go up and interview him real fast. And it was over, and I'm like, oh, man, if Kobe just flat out blows me off, it's going to be terrible. And he was the coolest, man. He just sat there, and we talked hoops for a minute, and totally fine. It was really, really cool.
I love Kobe. He's my number 2 after John.
Really? He's up there on the list?
My 3 are Larry, John, and Kobe, yeah. Those
Very
are my 3
nice,
guys.
man, yeah.
Dude, thank you. You're the man for coming in. I love you, buddy.
Thanks for having me, man, Chad. This was a lot of fun, man. I'm glad
no
we could do it.
disrespect, but I hope you don't sell your stuff so I get more Brian Noe. All right, Courtside Mondays with Chris Burkhardt coming up next. Thanks, Brenden. That's great, dude.